There's a genocide happening right now in the world, unlike anything that's happened since World War II, when we say never again. But we have no picture of it. I mean, most of the world's completely ignoring it, and most Americans don't even know what's going on and have no visual for it, even if you have ever heard of it. So to help us understand the depth, the size of the slave labor that's happening right now in China, that American companies are benefiting from, by the way, Weifeng Zhong is here from the Mercatus Center, is a senior research fellow at Mercatus, and that, of course, is associated with the George Mason University. Weifeng Zhong, how are you, sir?
Very good. How are you, Mike? Thanks for having me.
Wonderful to talk to you again. Thank you for being here. All right, do we have any idea how many people are in slave labor camps?
That's a very hard thing to guess because of the opaque system of the Chinese government. But according to some estimates, it could be multi-million of Uyghur minority people who are currently in the internment camps or concentration camps.
Can you help us understand what these internment camps, slave labor camps, concentration camps, what do the Chinese call them? First of all, they call them, they're not re-education camps. What's the name they have for them?
Yeah, it's sometimes it's called re-education center or vocational training program.
That's a vocational training. That's a vocational training. Man, they're good. Can you help paint a picture of what these vocational training schools look like in China?
Yeah, so it's actually something that China started to have as early as the early 1950s. So very soon after Mao founded the People's Republic of China after the Second World War. And the original purpose was to re-educate and what they call reform those criminals and thought criminals sometimes, and who disagree with the government. And actually, one of the very early prisoners in the prison camp was actually the last emperor of the Qing dynasty. And so they basically, he was captured by the Soviet Union, and Soviet Union, being a good friend of China, basically handed him over to the Chinese government, and then they put him into re-education camp. So this is it started many decades ago, but what has become worse is in recent, after China joined the WTO, a lot of these kind of bad practices, they become internalized as part of the institutions. So forced labor is like that, because if you think about it in the international trade context, it kind of makes sense for at least for the characters of the Chinese government that when you in trade, you sort of specialize in making what you can do the best. And at the institutional level, maximizing or making forced labor more widespread actually helps China in terms of making cheap products, which is why goods made with forced labor, especially including those coming out from the Xinjiang region, the Uyghur region of Xinjiang, actually can be found in many global brands nowadays, and maybe at your homes as well.
Like what? What brands? What products?
So a lot of cotton products. There's a fantastic study conducted by the ASPI, a think tank in Australia, that found that as many as 83 brands, including Nike and some others that, there are too many to name. But the fact is that although they did not directly use forced labor, but they contract with some other smaller companies in their supply chains, which has been shown that they have used forced labor. So that's the concerning part, is that not some companies that we see, they directly use and knowingly use forced labor. But it could be deep down in the supply chains that are yet to be known by the American consumers.
Yeah, and of course, that's how they get around it. They say that we're not employing slaves. Well, yeah, of course, you're not, but you're contracting to. Is it safe to say anything that comes out of that region of China has a connection with slavery, or is that too dramatic? Is there legitimate, I mean, as legitimate as you could be in a communist country, but is there legitimate operations coming out of that region, or is it all controlled by the communists and these labor camps?
So most things in the Chinese economy now are quite under direct or indirect control by the government. But it's hard to say. It's not true. I think it's not true economically speaking, that anything that comes out from Xinjiang is with forced labor. And another thing is to be noticed is that not every product made with forced labor comes out of Xinjiang. Actually, they transport the forced labor camps prisoners to other provinces outside of the Uyghur region. And then they are forced laborers in other places. So just banning, for example, products from Xinjiang will be overdoing it for some but also underdoing it for others.
Ah, how interesting. Very good. How much do the people of China, your average person in China, how much do they know about what's going on with the Uyghurs? / how much do they care? / how much could they even say anything about it if they wanted to?
So that's very interesting you mentioned that, because at the beginning you said a lot of Americans, they don't know about how bad things are in the forced labor camps in Xinjiang. I think Americans, they do actually know much more than Chinese people. If you just catch a random person on the street in China, they would say Xinjiang, it's just a province and things seem to look pretty good if you watch state-controlled media, which is something I did growing up too, right? So if I were still somebody who lived in China, I would probably have no idea either. So I think the people in China actually know much less about these terrible things than American people. And I'm a believer of the power of the American consumers. I think it's possible that they could make a change. And I think I see some pressures on some companies now that they are pledging to stay away from forced labor. So I think all these are welcome changes, and it's a matter to the key is to see how sustainable those changes will be.
Wow, that was deep and insightful. I want more of that. Like, subscribe, get more.